Good evening. We are back to the Spirit's book. We are still on book 2, chapter 8, Emancipation of the Soul. We discussed about sleep and dreams and some connections to dreams and to sleep. And we continue in this subject in different aspects of the emancipation of the soul. We are now today starting on the concealed transmission of thoughts that has 3 questions only. And then we move into lethargy and catalepsy, which is also not very long. And then we get into somnambulism, which is a bit longer subject. Okay, Philip, can you start for us?
419. How is it that the same idea, like a discovery, for instance, can occur in multiple places at the same time? We have already said that spirits communicate with one another during sleep. When their body awakens, spirits remember what they have learned and think that whatever outcome of that learning is actually a product of their own. Consequently, several individuals may learn the same thing at the same time. When you say that an idea is in the air, you are using a figure of speech that is much closer to the truth than you realize. Everyone unconsciously helps spread it. Our spirit often reveals to other spirits the object of our thoughts and reflections before we went to sleep, without our being aware of it.
Okay, so we know that thought is matter, that it propagates, and thoughts are connected through similar vibrations. We connect to others, both incarnate and discarnate, through our vibrational level that is also a result of the thoughts we are spreading. Now, we studied about sleep and dreams, and one of the dreams we talked about are experiences in the spiritual world, where we go detached from our physical body. We go to maybe an assembly of like-minded individuals, and we may watch a lecture like we have seen in many of the books of André Luiz in Life in the Spiritual World. So, by being all together with other like-minded individuals in one of these presentations, we come back and we bring some recollections, fragments of what we have learned. And this can come back to us and as an inspiration when we are working, for instance, like the question asks here, on a discovery. And we can, so more than one individual that were present at this presentation can come with similar ideas or different methods of doing the discovery, and a discovery happens in multiple places at the same time. This is one way of that it can happen. The other way is, of course, you have 2 individuals working on an idea in different places, and with their focus on that idea, and their thoughts are traveling to like-minded individuals that are working on the same things, and they may end up coming with the same discoveries together. One famous example that we have, it happened when they discovered the medicine that will help not really cure AIDS, but prevent HIV-infected patients to get AIDS. That was developed at the same time in the US and in France, and they were fighting for the patents and everything. This is an example of exactly what they're saying here. An idea that the same idea came at the same place, in the same place, in 2 different places, actually. When we talk about the vaccines for COVID, right, the two most wide used in the US, Pfizer and Moderna, they were developed in two different laboratories using more or less the same origin. So how does the origin came from? It started with a scientist, but others developed on top of it. How much they were working together unconsciously on that? Of course, we don't know, and but we know that there is this spiritual influence, both of the incarnates and the discarnates, and these connections through thought between the spirits that the incarnate individuals that are working on these discoveries. Okay, so that's how this process works, more or less. Okay, questions, comments? Okay, next, Philip. You're mute.
420. Can spirits communicate with each other when the body is awake? A spirit is not enclosed in its body, as in a box, but radiates around it in every direction. It can communicate with other spirits even when awake, although this is much more difficult to do.
Okay, so transmission of thoughts, we mentioned this a little bit. Spirit can communicate with each other. And again, we talked about it with Paco last week, right? That spirits, and more evolved spirits, continuously communicate through thoughts. Until we reach that level, we communicate through words. But it doesn't prevent us from being able to communicate through thoughts, even if it's not a clear communication. It's as an inspiration that comes out of we don't know where. So two individuals, again, they like what I said in the last question, two individuals working in the same project can communicate through thought, being aware or being unaware of that they are communicating through thoughts. So it is possible that you consciously try to communicate through thought and succeed, depending on the abilities of both sides, or unconsciously communicate through thought and succeed also without you being aware that you are doing it. Okay. Why they say it's much more difficult it's much more difficult when we are awake than when we are asleep. Of course, because when we are awake, we are in full control of our senses, and it makes it a little bit more difficult for us to enter into the state of being able to communicate through thought. When we are sleeping, we communicate with each other much more easier because our physical body is in rest, and we detach from our physical body, and we are in the spiritual world. Okay. Comments, questions here? Hi, Danny. Yes.
I'm a little bit confused about the question 419. So I'm not sure, is this saying that the spirits are meeting in the spiritual world?
No, I said that.
So the communication happens there as the same way it happens when we are in our bodies, but there it transmits easier or easily?
Yeah, what they are saying is that two spirits, when they are sleeping, two incarnate individuals, when they are sleeping, they can communicate with one another during their sleep and exchange ideas and wake up and remember the ideas and what they have, even if they don't remember exactly with whom they were talking to, and they don't fully remember the whole concept, they bring back impressions of the conversation and of the ideas and are able to develop whatever they are working with. I brought the concept of watching a presentation in the spiritual world because that's something we see we see constantly on the books of André Luiz, but here in the Spirits book, they don't say anything about it.
So that's my question. We meet other people during sleep and we communicate, like
Yes.
during our sleep. So we are having a conversation or we are exchanging ideas in the spiritual world.
Yes.
Okay, it's not that you can pick on other people's thoughts. Or
no. Here they're talking about conversation. The first question is about conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. The second question talks about transmission of thoughts a little bit more. Here they're talking about spirits communicating with each other. They don't say it's a verbal communication. But they don't say it's through thoughts also. But because the topic is transmission of thoughts, we may deduct that also it can be through thoughts, right? Okay. Anything else here?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Our necessities and even desires as incarnated spirits in this planet are quite similar, right? Take shading off the cultural differences. We pretty much need, relatively speaking, the same things and pretty much desire the same things, right? Again, taking away the cultural differences. So spirits in different parts of the world, we incarnate in different parts of the world, having similar needs, elevating ourselves in prayer, asking for assistance to figure one thing or another. We may receive those guidances at the same time in different parts of the world, right? So not necessarily that we are hanging out together. We could happen, as I said, all of us receiving a lecture, but in different parts of the world, spiritual guides are providing guidance to everyone who deserves, who can benefit from it. And it's very likely that some of those guidance, some of those advices may be the same in different parts of the world for different people. Does it make sense?
Yeah. There are several ways of communicating, right, with each other, and not, and I think that here, because the topic is transmission of thoughts, we try to bring a little bit more to this to the subject. But the communication, the guidance, as Elmo said, happens everywhere, and we can receive instructions from spirits during our sleep or through our inspiration. For those that work in mediumship meetings, right? The counselors are always, the dialoguers are always guided by the spiritual benefactors, and both me and Elmo can feel this every week when we work there, right? When you end up saying things that really doesn't come to your mind until you are saying it, which is clearly an inspiration from the spiritual world. So, but the transmission of thoughts, it's a subject that we can expand infinitely, right? Because there's so much more to talk. We have 3 questions that only in this subject, but you can have a whole seminar on it if you go deeper into the subject. Okay.
420. Can spirits communicate?
No, we did that already.
Sorry. 421. How is it that 2 individuals often have the same thought at the same time when fully awake? It is because 2 like-minded spirits may communicate their thought to each other even when the body is not asleep. A communication of thoughts between spirits sometimes enables two individuals to see and understand one another without words. We can say that they speak the language of the spirits.
Okay, it's a little more of the same of what we've been discussing, but you know, how many times in our lives we are talking to someone and the person says something and we say, I knew we were going to say that. Or we think about someone and then the phone rings and or we get a message from that person. Nowadays is a message, right, that we get. In the old days was the phone rang, but nowadays we have a text message from that person. This can start with a communication through thought. I'm not going to say every time it is, but it can be. It definitely can be. We think about you know, our cousin. Oh, I wonder how he or she is doing, and suddenly they send a message to you because our thoughts connected, our vibrations connected. Again, you need. It's a two-way street, right? I can think about my cousin, but if he or she is not really thinking about me and not really interested in what I'm doing or where I am, then it's a one-way street that's not going, nothing is going to come back, because the communication through thought has to have two sides. Otherwise, it doesn't happen, right? I can send my thoughts to Philip, and he can receive and we can communicate. But if I send my thoughts to Philip and he's completely focused on something completely different, I'm not saying it's negative. It's just not. He's not focusing on me. He's focusing on something else much more important than me, maybe much more relevant. And so it doesn't happen, the connection. But if let's say if I need help and I send these thoughts of asking for help, I may receive, for those that are open and connected to me in some form and some way, receive this prayers, vibrations, or whatever you want to call it, that I'm looking for. So it's again, we could discuss this for a whole day, different ways of transmission of thoughts. But the idea here is very simple, right? We are spirits. The physical body is a restriction to the communication through thoughts, but not an impediment. We the spirit can communicate through thoughts. We can communicate outside of our physical body, and we can communicate while awake or while asleep. It's just, again, the communication has to have, it's a two-way street, right? Okay, this is it for this subject. So if anyone has any questions or comments, we are moving into lethargy and catalepsy, which is an interesting subject also. Oh, okay. Okay. So before we go into their lethargy and catalepsy, apparent death, let's first define those words according to Spiritism. Again, according to Spiritism. Lethargy is a complete numbness of the whole body. The body looks like it's dead. Catalepsy, the same thing, but not necessarily the full body. It can be parts of the body. Okay, we're going to see this more in detail. Elmo, I don't know if medically you want to add something here. Elmo?
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
Lethargy would be difficult to arouse just before stupor. Okay, catalepsy is an apparent death.
What was that word you said? Lethargy is a what?
Lethargy is a difficulty to arouse,
Right.
to
There was another-
awaken.
Awake. Yeah.
Oh.
It's yeah, you are trapped in your body and you cannot
But then I'm talking about medical terms, and I think we should leave it
Yeah.
out and keep what those terminologies as in spiritism to not create a sense that then neurologist says, no, you guys have it wrong. But we are not here discussing a neurology, we're here discussing spiritism. So should stick with spiritism.
yeah, but it's important. Yes, I agree, Elmo, but that's why we always go back to spiritism. But it's important to understand these are words that are very well known in the medical field, and there are treatments for catalepsy and lethargy, and that there are medical explanations for both of them. Okay, we are going to look at the spiritual side of it according to spiritism.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Patients who experience lethargy usually see and hear what takes place around them, but are unable to express themselves verbally. Is it through the eyes and ears of the body that these impressions are received? No, they are received by the spirit. The spirit is conscious, but cannot express itself. Why is it unable to express itself? The state of its body prevents it. This unusual state of the spirit's organs proves that human beings are something more than their bodies, since the body is no longer functioning, and yet the spirit acts.
So I'm going to bring here something else because I think it's important when we're discussing this lethargy and catalepsy, which is the near-death experience, right? The NDEs. At the time of Kardec, NDEs were not very common. There are very few reports because the medical field had not developed yet enough to bring back patients from a near-death experience. So there are cases throughout history of near-death experience, but it became much more common with the advance of science and with the reports we have today. The best example that we have in the recent years is Dr. Eben Alexander, that was in the Manla event that Jussara presented this weekend, that a neurosurgeon that had the experience himself and changed completely his way of thinking and his way of seeing the spirit and the body. So we know spiritism that we have a physical body, and the spirit can act outside the physical body. So what the first part here, Kardec asks if those that are experiencing lethargy, but they see and hear what takes place around them, but they cannot communicate, because the state of lethargy, the patient cannot communicate. It's like the near-death experience. The patient is in a state of a coma, which is not lethargy. Coma is coma, but it's a similar state in the sense that the patient cannot express itself verbally. And we know that many of these descriptions, the patients will tell that they were seeing and hearing everything that was happening around them, sometimes seeing from above, sometimes next to those that were working on the physical body. And we know that, of course, the question that Kardec asked, why they are unable to express itself, if the physical body is unable to express itself, the spirit manifests through the physical body. The only other way is through mediumship, right? But this is a different story. So if the body is in a state of lethargy or in a coma, the spirit is not able to use the physical body to express oneself. Okay? Okay. Next.
423. While the body is in a state of lethargy, can a spirit fully separate from the body, given it all the visible indications of death, and then come back and inhabit it? The body is not dead when experiencing the state of lethargy. The vitality in the body is dormant. However, it still maintains some of its functions. Its vitality is dormant, but it is not extinguished, and a spirit is tied to its body as long as it is alive. Once the links that bind them are broken by real death and decomposition of the physical organs, the separation is complete and the spirit never returns to that body. When one who is apparently dead comes back to life, it is because death was not fully completed.
So we know that we learned through Spiritism that the perispirit and the physical body are connected through several links, several cords, and the main one being the silver cord that connects from the top of our head to the perispirit, between the physical body and the perispirit. But every other place in our physical body has these links. What happens when we sleep or when we have entered into the state of lethargy or catalepsy is that many of these links cease to work, but they don't cease to exist, especially the silver cord, the main one, that continues to be connected and functioning. Otherwise, if the links are all broken, the physical body dies. Once all the links are broken, the physical body dies and there is no return to the physical body. We cannot go back to the physical body. It's very important that we understand the concept, because a lot of people call the coming back to the physical life a miracle. And we discussed that on Sunday, the concept of miracles, right? Miracle is a derogation of the natural law, and the natural law is perfect, so it cannot be derogated. So there is no miracle. There is just an awareness of the spirit still being connected to the physical body, because the physical body is showing all signs of death. I was reading today a very interesting case. Ivone Pereira, one of the most famous mediums in Brazil, that has a lot of very interesting books that only 2 are translated, Memoirs of a Suicide, which is a very strong book, difficult to read, but very interesting, and the other one, On the Canvas of the Infinite. When she was less than 1 month old, she entered into this state of lethargy / catalepsy. This is in the beginning of the 20th century, right? She was thought by the family that she was dead. She lived in a big family in the interior of Brazil, in the state of Rio de Janeiro, in the south, and they thought she was dead, and they prepared her burial. They bought a casket. They did all that. The doctor said she was dead, and the only person that didn't accept that she was dead was her mother. Her mother was not Spiritist, for she was a Catholic. And so she started praying for the Virgin Mary, asking the Virgin Mary to help her daughter to awake. And she said, if my daughter is dead, then fine, let her go. But if she's not, please bring her back before they bury her, and I'll dedicate her life to you. And then she went back to, after she prayed, she was already in that state for some days. and she went there, and when she touched the Ivoni's head, she started crying. Ivoni, the baby, started crying, and all the family ran and everything. So, and she said that she had to go through that experience she learned later in life because she was a suicide in a previous life. She drowned herself, and so she had to go through this experience as an expiation for this suicide that she went through. And so, you know, like that, we have, of course, 3 famous cases of Jesus resuscitating dead, right? Lazarus, the daughter of Jairus, and then another one that I don't remember, which are all cases of catalepsy or lethargy that Jesus, of course, as a perfect spirit, knew perfectly, looking at the physical body, that the connections were still there, so there was no real death. Because if the connections were severed, not even Jesus could bring back to life whoever was, because even as a perfect spirit, you cannot derogate the natural laws. Once all the links are broken between the physical body and the spiritual body, there is no return. The physical body is dead. Okay. Questions, comments here? Okay. Last one.
424. Is it possible to rejuvenate the ties that were ready to break and restore life to a person who would have died without proper medical assistance in a timely fashion? Yes, and you have proof of this every day. Magnetism often exercises a powerful restorative action because it provides vital fluid to the body, which it needs to keep the organs functioning. Lethargy and catalepsy are both a type of temporary loss of sensitivity and power of motion caused by some unexplained physiological condition. They differ in that in lethargy, the overpowering of the vital force is general and gives the body the appearance of death, while in catalepsy, it is localized and may affect a more or less extensive portion of the body while leaving intelligence unaffected. Lethargy is always natural and catalepsy is sometimes spontaneous, but it may be artificially produced and also dispelled by magnetic action.
Okay, so first, the question from Kardec is if we can reestablish the ties or improve the state of the patient when the patient is almost ready to die, and restore life. And the answer from the spirits is that we see that every day through, at that time, magnetism. I remember Kardec was a study of magnetism, because before studying spiritism, mesmerism or magnetism, that was the therapeutic system that was researched by Frank Mesmer, the German physician. Kardec was a student of it, and from it moved to spiritism, and he brought all the knowledge he had in magnetism. And we know that when we have the spiritual passes, that the energy is brought from the spirits to the patient, but some magnetic healing can also be used by the pass giver to help on the recovery of the patient. So what they are saying here, the spirits are saying, is that yes, magnetism can help a better recover of the patient that is going through the state of lethargy or catalepsy. And then Kardec gives us an explanation here on the definitions that we mentioned before, But he adds that lethargy is always natural, meaning it's not induced, and catalepsy can be induced without giving further details. And I don't really know how you can induce catalepsy. Have you ever heard of it, Elmo?
No, really never. I do wonder if some deep process of subjugation would be one of the possibilities.
Yeah, that's a good guess. I imagine that it can, but I never read about it.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Danny.
But in both cases, the person looks dead.
Yes.
Catalepsy, no.
In both cases, the person looks dead. What are the medical examination? And how do you see nowadays that person is not dead? Is the brain activity, or where do you find that a person in those states is not dead?
The final say in case of a determination of death, physical death, the final say is by lack of brain activity proved with the EEG or electroencephalogram. There are other ways you can check for exploration of carbon dioxide. But the final saying, after you do everything and it's still not so sure, the patient has all the clinical signs of being dead. And someone, very often be a family member, say, no, it's not, I doubt the data you can prove, and at this point, you can declare death is by no brain activity with electroencephalogram. Now, it's my point at the beginning, I think it's very important to make it here, is that if, let's say, a neurologist listen to us right now, they're going to curse us if we use this terminology as a medical term, because it's completely different. So it's very important that you understand that we use these terminologies here in accordance to what Spiritism teaches, or in accordance with the teachings of science of the time. I don't think there is a need to edit and bring these terminologies apart with our science today, but it's important that you understand that we are not talking about neurology here, talking about spiritism, because it's almost the opposite. Catalepsy in our science is an apparent death. And lethargy is a difficulty to awaken, but the person can awake, the person will show signs. Let's say, if I come to a patient on the bedside, I call the patient's name, hey, Mary. Mary wakes up, say, hey, right? So this patient's easily arousable. I go to the same Mary the next day and say, hey, Mary, and nothing. Then I shake her up and she wakes up, look at me. Yeah, she's lethargic. If I wake Mary up and in the middle of a sentence she falls asleep, she's lethargic. A cataleptic, you show no signs. It's like being in coma, but even deeper, because even the vital signs reflects death. It's something very rare, and it belongs to the science of not psychology, but psychiatry. It belongs to the field of psychiatry.
I read that schizophrenia can cause catalepsy, right?
Correct.
It's possible.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So I just find that it's very important that we are not talking about, medical science here, because then the terminologies would be completely erroneous.
Yeah. Again, this is what these are states that, again, the words may not be the update words that medicine used, but the state that they describe here is what we need to understand, which is a state that the body is not responding to external stimuli, right? So the body looks like it's dead in both lethargy and catalepsy, right? But again,
in accordance with
yes.
Spiritism.
Yeah, according to Spiritism,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So that's why I'm saying we need to understand the concept here. The words we shouldn't be we shouldn't try to match the words with the medical definitions of it, because like everything else in Spiritism, Spiritism goes beyond, right? And a state of a lethargy, of catalepsy, we describe the state of what the physical body is going through and what the spirit is perceiving at that time, which is, again, near-death experience. Spiritism explains it very easily. Science is still struggling to explain, to accept, to understand. And we in Spiritism have no problem in explaining it, because it's so common to Spiritism that the physical body is just an instrument. The spiritual body, the spirit survives the death of the physical body, and when the physical body is in a coma, the spirit is not in a coma. The spirit is outside of it, acting. It may be seeing everything that is happening, or maybe experiencing these descriptions that you see going to the light and these other things that are experiences that the spirit will have, depending on your beliefs, depending on your openness, and depending on your mental vibration. Because one thing that I found it very interesting, and one of the lectures that I was watching on the weekend on the Menla, is that someone asked the question that I always wanted to ask on these near-death experiences, because why all these spirits, these people report that they had a peaceful experience, they saw the light, it's never a bad experience. And the guy said, no, we had some cases that they came back and reported very stressful situations, very unpleasant situations. And then I said, wow, thank God I heard for the first time that not, because we know in Spiritism, depends on where you are mentally and vibrationally, you're not guaranteed to have pleasant experiences in a near-death experience. You can have very unpleasant experiences, right, depending on your state. But again, near-death experience, it's a little bit similar to everything we're studying here. Okay. Yes, Danny.
So in these both cases, there is no injury beforehand. No form of injury to the person to be in those two states.
Very good point. Yes, you have to rule out physical causes there. You have to make sure that you rule out physical causes, right? Because the guy got hit in the head, got punched in the head, then there is a physical cause, and we would not consider those spiritual causes. Yes, you have to rule out all the physical causes first. And that's why we always try to speak when you speak with fraternal sisters and we speak with everyone, we always say, let's rule out everything that it may be of a physical nature before you jump into spiritual causes.
So people do check in hospitals in these states, or no?
Yes.
Yeah. I imagine people end up in the hospitals, right, Elmo?
I would imagine so, yes.
Because if you are in the state that you are not responsive, whoever is with you is going to call 911, right? Yeah. That's what I imagine.
Absolutely.
Okay. You know, I'm tempted not to jump into somnambulism because we have a little more than 10 minutes. And somnambulism is a very...
Can we just jump the road together, go to the next topic? This is my worst nightmare.
Yeah, somnambulic state. Yeah, I would just give a heads up that somnambulism, according to Spiritism, it's a state of trance, right? It's not sleepwalking. Sleepwalking is a different thing. Okay. It can be the same case. You can sleepwalk and be a somnambulist, but you can sleepwalk and not be a somnambulist. Somnambulism is an altered state of conscience. But after it, you go to ecstatic spirits, Elmo. You want to go there?
Question.
It's so far
Go
from
ahead,
us,
Philip.
it's easy to deal with.
Before
Right.
we leave the topic of lethargy and somnambulism, is there anything written that we could read to clear it up our understanding of these words in Spiritism?
In lethargy and catalepsy,
Yes.
you won't find any more than what is here in the Spirit's book, and a couple of 2 or 3 examples in the Spiritist Review that I don't remember exactly what years. I can try to find for you, but it's just examples, people reporting their own experiences in catalepsy, and then talks about the cures of Jesus on the 3 cataleptic people that I mentioned. So I couldn't find anything interesting either in Emmanuel, or Emmanuel has one question and answer on the book Religion of the Spirits. André Luiz doesn't have anything. I think there is a couple of cases in André Luiz books of catalepsy, but there is not much more to read about it. Elmo, do you remember anything else?
In the book Teoria da Mediunidade, but it's not translated. It's not translated. There's something in what is his name again? I have the book right here with me. Sorry, Hernani Guimarães. There is something also, but it's also not translated. But again, not much. You're right. Not much at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Translated, I don't know anything translated.
I don't even in Portuguese. I don't think you are going to go very far in this two words. There is not much information.
I agree.
And I think that you can speculate here, Philip. Why? I think it's not that relevant in the end, right? Because the understanding of the state of the spirit not being fully attached to the physical body and not dependent on the physical body to act, to think, to express itself is what matters in the end. The rest is much more medical than spiritual, in my understanding. But that's my opinion. But I don't know if Elmo agrees with me or not.
I agree 100%. I think Kardec, for the sake of completeness, bring those topics, but doesn't spend much time on it, because you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole idea of spiritualism is to educate us to live our physical life here to the best that we can. Understanding issues of spiritual matter in the spiritual world is helpful, but the main focus is how to live a better life here, to generate good consequences when we go back home. And this state of lethargy or catalepsy not going to contribute much to our life here. It's,
the only thing we need to worry is not to be buried alive, right?
I can only imagine
which is
how
a
many.
fear, a fear that many people have throughout the centuries, because many were, and I still have it today, despite all medical advances, right? I never forgot that I learned that the expression "saved by the bell" is related to being buried alive.
Thank you for trying.
Yeah, I can.
We do what we can, Philip, but you know, if there is not much more, you know, we are not going to waste your time looking for something that you won't find. So even if I wait for all the translations, nothing much more will come out of it.
Agree.
All right. Anyone else? Anything else related to these topics? I'm not going to go into somnambulism, because that's a whole subject that I want to start next week. It's a very interesting subject. I know it's difficult sometimes to understand, because we mix somnambulism just with sleepwalking, and a lot of things are actually, there is a lot of similarities, but they are different. And it's interesting that at least in English you have two different words, right? In Portuguese you don't. So it's even more complicated to explain somnambulism in Portuguese, because you have only one word, which is somnambulism. You don't have sleepwalking in Portuguese. All right. Okay, if no one has anything else, we're closing here. I want really to call your attention to the lecture we're having this Saturday, because Dr. Alexander Moreira Almeida is on the forefront of Spiritist medical research in Brazil. He's one of the most accomplished Spiritist researchers in Brazil. And he has been investigating spiritual experiences associated with the medical advancements for more than 25 years. He has already published more than 150 papers in peer-reviewed journals, and he received more than 6,700 citations. And his emphasis in the last decade has been investigating the evidence of consciousness activity beyond the brain, especially for evidence of survival of human consciousness after death. And that's exactly what he's going to talk about: research on survival of consciousness. Okay, this is Saturday at 11 a.m. It's really worth watching his lecture. He's been part of the Medical Spiritist Association congresses every year. He's a well-known researcher. He's been doing this work for a long time. And I remember talking to him some 10, 15 years ago, and he said that when he started, you know, he would send a request. Juiz de Fora is a city in the interior of Brazil, of Minas Gerais. He would send a request for an article and receive the article 2 months after he asked for it. And nowadays, you go to the internet and find the article and everything related to it, and even the lies associated with it in a matter of seconds, right? So the law of progress that Spiritism tells us. So don't miss it. If you cannot watch it live, please catch it later. It's always recorded. It's always posted on the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube. Our YouTube page, a Spiritist Group of New York, is always there also. So this Saturday at 11 a.m. Okay. Jussara has started this Tuesday a study of the book Inner Transformation that she published last year in Portuguese and then in English. She started this last Tuesday, and she will continue studying on Tuesdays at 12. So if you are interested in learning more about inner transformation, it's on Tuesdays at 12. And again, everything that we do is recorded, okay? This Sunday, we're going to study the book, go back to the book Liberation. We are in the middle of chapter 9. We are in a very interesting part of it when they are going to take Margarida they are going to accompany Margarida to a mass at a church, and they describe the spiritual ambient of the church during a mass, which is very interesting, amongst other things that we're going to study. Okay, this is Sunday at 11 a.m. Okay, the book club. Where are we, Danny?
Sorry, as you see, I have company. I get distracted. We didn't ended up discussing chapter 5. We discussed only chapter 4. So chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
Yeah, we usually go 2 by 2, and then it got juicy now. So
That's good.
chapter 4, chapter 5 next Wednesday. Only one chapter.
Yeah, that's better.
That's
Means
good.
that you're going deeper into the chapters. That's a good sign.
Yeah, it started to slow down now.
Yeah. We were trying to do, liberation. We were trying to do one chapter per study, but now we failed miserably to complete a chapter per study. So we're doing half chapter or something like that. Let's see. Okay. Zoraida, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, I can, of course. And now as we come to the end of our meeting, with gratitude in our hearts, we give thanks to the spiritual benefactors that have come here in assistance of the understanding, the emancipation of the soul, to understand it and give all that we can to help all those around us, which is so important. We give thanks for that. And we ask, dear Father, as we continue throughout our week of studies, may you guide us as you do always. We ask for the help and assistance for all that is going on throughout our planet here. May we continue to pray for all those that are suffering, helping them with peace and serenity and faith in their hearts. We pray for our Spiritist Center of New York, for all Spiritist centers, that we could be protected and guided and continue with our work of studies. We're very grateful, dear Lord, for that, for the teachers, all that have dedicated themselves to our learning. We pray, dear Father, for United States Spiritist Council, the United States Spiritist Federation, all that are in need, dear Father, for the homeless, for all that are going through difficulties with their finances, for the homeless, for the undeveloped countries. May we understand the need of prayers and continue throughout the week with faith on our hearts that we're never alone. Dear Father, and as we leave here today in this part of the meeting, may we come back again next week and continue our studies. With our hearts full of gratitude, we thank you and ask permission to close this part of the meeting today. So be it.